So I took the Massachusetts Learner's Permit test recently. Here's what to focus on to pass it, and also my problems with the test since I have a few. Note, this will only be for the Massachusetts test, the evidence for this video being my own experience along with a few others that I have gathered from my job. This test is different from other states, especially Rhode Island, and I will explain why shortly. Beware. To pass this test, you need to know Chapter 2 in and out. This test, contrary to the practice tests that I have encountered online, should really be a signs and finds test. Almost nothing on the practice test from what I've encountered, other than the signs questions, will appear. Chapter 2 is all about keeping your license. It covers civil, motor vehicle infractions, criminal violations, and motor vehicle crashes where you are found to be more than 50% at fault. You will need to study the pages on screen in order to know enough to pass the actual test. After studying Chapter 2, you also need to know the signs and their color/shape with their meanings. So these pages right here. Now, don't forget to do the practice test. You should know the book inside and out. The chapters 3, 4, and 5 come to mind and are relevant. These chapters tackle how to be safe in your vehicle, the rules of the road, and special driving situations, the stuff that's important when driving. The actual permit test has large parts of it tackling the punishments for crimes. They should focus on what's wrong rather than the aftermath of criminal behavior, especially since we all know what not to do. We don't need to know the actual punishments, we just need to know not to do it. When I did my test, I was unprepared. This was since I studied chapters 3 through 5, since I figured it was relevant. My assumption was even reinforced by the practice test. They universally focused on these 3 chapters. Getting an 80% pass rate average for each test taken was my final confirmation that my assumption was actually right. So I gathered up my materials, paid $30, I finally got the test ready, and I finally did it. And when I saw those questions on the screen, my eyes were opened. Half the test was on Chapter 2. Barely any of the test mentioned Chapters 3, 4, or 5, with the only real notable exception being the signs from Chapter 4. I should have been prepared, and it is my fault for not knowing Chapter 2. No one's denying that, but it confused me as to why the practice test was completely different chapters of the book to focus on. In order to pass, I ended up cheating. There, I admit it. I was doing it straight at the beginning, but when a lot of the questions I noticed were fines and stuff, and I realized, wait, I don't know the fines. Where are the intersection questions? I was thinking, well dang, okay, I'm looking these up because this sucks. Now, it was a bad thing for me to cheat on my test. It was also a bad thing for me to try to justify this behavior to myself, but that was my thought process. Admitting this is the honest and proper thing to do, so I'm doing that here. My thought process was that if I didn't cheat, then I would have to spend another $30, which, even though cheating on a test is ethically wrong, it just was not economically viable, especially just to get a learner's permit, especially for stuff that I knew the relevant information for. I got lucky and could cheat at home. Soon, however, that won't be a possibility, and the resources online are steering people in the wrong direction on what to study on. Those resources are not showing that knowing the fines is important to pass. I know that it isn't this specific test being skewed toward Chapter 2, since I asked a few people from my job, people who did take the test within the last 5 years. They all had the same opinion as me on the test. Their criticisms were pretty similar to mine. So do you agree that the permit test focuses mostly on just the fines and punishments?
Yes.
What questions did you see mostly on the permit test? It was signs and fines, wasn't it?
Yeah.
They slipped in a bunch of fine questions in there?
Yeah, there definitely was a couple of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You told me that it was just mixed in there. I'm assuming there was some normal ones in there, or
Some straightforward ones with some like harder, kind of stupid ones that don't really.
was it like mine, like the one where it was like mostly didn't relate, or was it like some good ones in there?
They didn't really relate it. And, like a lot of it, like had nothing to do with like driving a car or anything.
Your test and
I already did.
You did?
Yeah.
It was just fines and shit?
Yeah, it was pretty much just that. But
You know they switch up the test like every they switch up the test every time. It's not always the same test, right?
I asked like 5 people and they all said it was the same, and these were tests separated by months and years.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, it wasn't a lot of fines, to be honest.
So what was it again? I'll just record it. And
Yeah.
This is counter evidence. So
I mean, shit. For me, I've had some. They asked me about like blood percentage on like alcohol blood percentage, that shit.
well, that was in mine. Yeah.
Yeah, they were asking about like yielding, like school bus yielding, like railroad crossing, like just basic like traffic shit.
Yeah.
They asked about some signs. There was honestly, I don't think there was a single question about fines on mine.
All right. So I'm glad they at least gave you a proper test and didn't focus it on just chapter 2.
They didn't have a lot of fines at all on mine, so I don't know.
So
I actually got a 20 out of 20 on my shit when I took it.
I asked 5 other people and they all said it was mostly fines and just the signs.
Nah, there was, because I think it's required in all states that they do like a section just for fines and shit, for signs and all that, but
Yeah.
I don't know about the fines and all that. Like, it wasn't on mine.
A solid half of the test for me was just on fines.
Yeah, that wasn't on mine. I didn't have to memorize any of that shit.
Well, you got lucky. So what was on your test for the Rhode Island?
I really don't remember all of them.
Well, just the 3 questions. It's fine
What
that you remember.
questions were, what is this sign? Another question was, who has the right of way? It was a 4-way intersection.
Yeah.
And then there was another question where, what does it mean when there's double dotted lines between 2?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was the stuff that I noticed on the practice test for the Massachusetts practice tests. So it's like the actual test for the Massachusetts one wasn't relevant, but it would have been relevant for the Rhode Island one. So what's going on here?
Yeah, I don't know.
They should have, I don't know, it should have been more relevant.
Yeah. Think so.
Yeah. And there was nothing about fines or anything on there from what you can remember? Or
Fines. Not that I remember.
Alright. So other states have permit tests that are relevant, but not Massachusetts? No wonder why everyone seems to be a bad driver in the state. I mean, if you look around, you'll see massholes everywhere. I'll say it here again, a test that is not relevant to your everyday drive or common situations, but rather is focused on knowing specific punishments and fines to crimes that are pretty much common sense. We all know not to speed or drag race or do all this stuff, is not what you need to know to encourage proper and responsible driving, especially since these fines can be changed on a whim at any time. So even if you memorize them, they might be out of date by next year, at least the one that might be relevant to that specific situation. The universal concepts should be the focus, not the stuff that is very likely to change. I hope this video helps you all study, and I hope it also brings to light the issue with this test. I mean, just to find out that it's only this test, or at least there are tests that are actually relevant in other states, while this one is not very relevant. I don't know, it kind of pissed me off. I mean, I studied, and almost failed because the information was not relevant or even reflected properly in the practice tests, which are supposed to be up to date, and I don't want that to happen to anyone else. I felt like I had to make this video because of that, to help other people get through this test, especially if they didn't go to driver's ed or anything like that. I hope it helped you guys. Have a good day.